Hello, Michael. I hear that so many crazy things going on in America. I hear you are now in Arizona. Could you please tell us what's happening?
Right. We know that the last election, there were many elections that were stolen. One of the key elections that was stolen was here in Arizona. So I just came in after several months in Europe and Asia and flew straight to Los Angeles, actually, and drove over to Phoenix, where I'm at now, because the key election here, for instance, the governor's race, we were hoping Carrie Lake would win the governorship. She may have, actually. It's unclear at this point. But I was at two of the polling places today, and there were strong indicators there's fraud going on. For instance, I'm in Maricopa County, which is the county that Phoenix is in, and about 20% of some of the key machines were not working, right? And so 20%, right? A little bit, I think it was 21%. I'm not sure about that, but say 20%, right? And of the machines not working. And now the election officials were saying, hey, it's not a big deal. You can just do this, that, and the other. But the bottom line is it was a big deal, very big deal. And so we're starting to see also evidence of fraud again in different races. Like you'll see it as the next few days unfold, whether it's Arizona or others, or just ridiculous outcomes. For instance, in Pennsylvania, a fellow named Fetterman won a Senate race, and he's clearly brain damaged. I mean, severely brain damaged, even more so than Biden. And he just won an election. And in fact, I just sent you a photo of him that's been published on mainstream media saying that he won the race in Pennsylvania. Look at Fetterman, look at some of the videos of him talking, and you can see that he doesn't even know where he's at sometimes, right? And he just won a Senate race. This is just like all the other basically non-qualified people like Biden or Harris or Pelosi. She's a drunk who's, the third most in the line of chain of command in the United States would be Pelosi. Of course, her drunk husband was in an accident recently, a car accident, and then somebody under mysterious circumstances broke into their home about a week ago with a hammer. And so very mysterious, all these things. I mean, you and I and others have talked about the World Economic Forum and the globalists and these people that are openly working to install people into leadership positions who are just puppets. For instance, Trudeau up in Canada, Mark Rutte over in the Netherlands, and just so many. Whether it's in Finland or New Zealand, it's who's who in the zoo. It's basically one monkey after another being installed under very suspicious circumstances, right? And we're continuing to see that around the United States. Hopefully, Carrie Lake will win just by overwhelming voter turnout. There's been a huge turnout. We know there's been a huge turnout. Now, Florida has been an exception. Of course, I wish I were in Florida. I'm from Florida, but I came to Arizona. But Florida, since the last election, with our very strong governor, very proud of him, Ron DeSantis, since he's been governor, there's been a lot of changes in election law. People have been being put in prison in Florida for violating election law. So basically, there's a sheriff in town actually enforcing law at this point. And so DeSantis just won by a huge margin, actually. And you see in places where there are strong election laws, Republicans tend to win, actually. And then in places where there's very obvious fraud, it's what we call blue state or blue wins for the Democrats. And so, yeah, there's the tensions are very high in the United States right now, especially with the economy collapsing. There's no faith whatsoever in the federal government by anybody that I know of, especially people that work for the government. There's no faith whatsoever in the FBI to investigate election fraud. In fact, people believe that they're probably involved in it. Tonight, I was talking at length with Greg Phillips, who just got out of prison this week. He was just put in prison for about a week. Greg Phillips he was put in prison for defamation, which is quite strange, or actually contempt, I believe it was. I talked with him tonight for a long time. Actually, we talked about things like Dairy and Gap, but Greg just got out of prison, and he is one that's been involved in election fraud, tracking election fraud, tracking electronic say hanky panky with the voting machines and with all kinds of things. And so he's quite a big threat to the system. And then he, interestingly, just ended up in prison. Now, interestingly, that's made him actually quite famous. Like tonight, I think just a couple of weeks ago, most people wouldn't recognize him. Tonight, everybody's like stopping and what's their photo with him, right? He's a very serious man, but he wasn't as well known. So these are one of those things where it can kind of backfire, right? For the authoritarians. But the bottom line is there is a lot of suspicion about this election already. But I could clearly see, like I said, the two polling places I went to in Maricopa County, specifically in Phoenix today, there were allegations at both of those that something appeared to be intentionally. You could not explain all this away with just incompetence. We've seen it before. Everybody expected fraud. That's why I came to Phoenix all the way from Thailand, right? I just came from the other side of the world to Phoenix because we expected this would be one of the places where people would do fraud, because this is just like the ecosystem here, right? And it was during the last elections highly suspect and changed the course of the nation, right? And so, yeah, people are unhappy. Again, as the economy goes the way it does, our borders are wide open. People are being kept in office or put in office who are all for open borders, just wide open, no borders, not even open borders, but just no borders, right? And in Japan, for any Japanese who are listening to this, you got to really guard your borders. It's really important. And there's an information war now to get to soften up Japanese to just open their borders, and let other people come in and just move in beside. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Stand up and be strong for Japan. It's destroying Europe. It's destroying the United States. Go ahead, Misako.
Yeah, so you mentioned, so you are now in specifically came to Maricopa County, and I saw a couple of video clips on Twitter, and people actually took the video of tabulators and saying that, like you mentioned, 20% of a voting machine, a counting machine tabulator is not working. What do you mean by not working? Like, what specifically happening?
There's some sort of scanner that you do your voting and you scan it in, right? And since I can't vote here, I didn't get to go. I'm not from here. I didn't get to go in and vote, and you're not allowed to just come in and look at it, right? So one of the election officials came out and spoke at length, and I did an interview with her today, actually, on War Room. And so she explained it, and she, and she said that, there's what they call the box 3 or door 3. If your vote doesn't go through that scanner, which scans it in electronically and tabulates it, then you're supposed to put it into this, what they call door 3 or box 3, which is to be counted later. And it was these box 3s or door 3s, which were highly suspect for, basically the box for fraud in the previous election. And so you could hear people today like Kerry Lake or Steve Bannon, or I think I heard President Trump, let's just call him that, on one of his interviews today, saying, don't put it in door 3. I'm not sure if Trump said that, but certainly Kerry Lake said it. She's like, whatever you do, don't put it in there. If you have to wait 30 minutes, if you have to wait an hour, if you have to go to another polling station, just please do that. But Sarah that we interviewed today at the polling place, one of the polling place, Sarah said, she saw one man try, I think she said 3 times, and he was very patient. He did not want to put it in that door 3. But most of the people don't have time to just go to another polling place, or maybe not have a car, or they've waited in line for a long time, and then they don't understand the implications of just putting it in there and realizing they're putting it in the box for blue fraud. Let's just call it what it is, blue fraud. I mean, we know what's happening. We know who's doing it. We're adults here. We're not going to sit around and say, hey, it's a suspicious activity. They're clearly doing fraud. It's a done deal. We don't know the borders of it. We don't know all the specifics and all the time, but they have been caught red-handed over and over and over. It's like, a bank robber that's robbed 50 banks, and then 3 banks get robbed in the neighborhood, and the bank robber's like, I didn't rob those banks. It's like, well, we're a little suspicious because we caught you in the last 50 in a row, and so right now, like tonight, there was the Republican side asked for the voting to continue until 10 p.m. A judge denied that because there were voting problems. People were having problems voting. So people were still waiting to vote and couldn't vote. And of course, we were trying to, allow people to vote after they stand in line so long when those machines didn't work, right? And so, but a judge said, no, I'm not going to get those extra 2 hours. I mean, this is clearly, this government is fraudulent. I mean, it is in and of itself, participating in the fraud, right? It's not just individuals doing it, it's members of the government.
Okay, so because of the tabulator not working, people came, but those who didn't have enough time, so they could not just vote and went home, or
many of them put it in that box 3 or door 3, right?
Okay.
And we know from previous research in the elections 2 years ago, which took a long time to do all this research, that once it goes into there, it's like, the people that got their COVID thing, when they were telling everybody to go on the ventilator, or, they're making all these ventilators. We know now that when people went on the ventilator, they just basically died, right? And that's the same. Door 3 for the voting is the same thing. Once you put your vote into door 3 or box 3, you basically put it on the ventilator. You've put it into the hands of the fraudsters, and they can do whatever they want with it. And we know they're not going to, they can either just throw the vote out and say, hey, there was something wrong with this sheet, or they can, do whatever they want with it.
Wow.
It's in their care. I mean, they're like, for instance, right now, tonight, I got word that a lot of people were going to the county, one of the county offices where they're counting these things. And I almost did it too, but I ended up just talking with so many key people in the elections here. And so they were going to wait outside, right? And they wanted, outside this counting place. And they were threatened with arrest if they stayed there, right? That's what somebody here told me. I didn't get to go because I've been busy talking with people, and then we went on air right now.
Okay, then. So what Republican side is going to do next? For example, Carrie Lake. What happened in her state? What is going to do, or her campaign?
I'm sorry, I'm sitting on the ground actually. I have to for various reasons, but if Carrie Lake wins, hopefully she will win. There's indicators that she will, and then there's indicators she might not. And so, when Ron DeSantis in Florida won, they got right on it, and they hardened up the election, oversight, right? And so now when people are trying to steal elections in Florida, hey, it is like robbing a bank. Yeah, you can rob the bank and you can get caught, because it's getting more serious, and you're not just going to get slapped on the wrist. You're going to go to prison, right? So that takes a little bit of the fun out of it, right? The people that are just doing recreational election fraud in the state of Florida, in some of these other states like Pennsylvania, you just do whatever you want, right? But in states like Florida now, it's getting a little bit more risky. You're not going to be able to do it like recreationally, like you get caught and really nothing happens, or nobody looks. The government covers up for you. In Florida, there's a good chance you're going to go to prison. So this is the way it needs to be, right? And interestingly, though, when this was just done in Florida, like I said, I don't know the final tally on DeSantis versus Chris, but it looks like it was an extraordinary margin. It was very and a lot of us, people have thought this for years, that if the elections were actually fair, you would find out that the Democrats actually they're not as big and wide and as powerful as you think they are. They're puffed up like a puffer fish because of all the fraud, right? And the Republicans don't have the guts to stop it. I mean, that's the bottom line. One side's got the guts to do it, and the other side doesn't have the guts to stop them, right? And so in Florida, we see that DeSantis has had the guts to stop him, right? But until people just stand up and say, no, you're not going to do that. We have a First Amendment and we have a Second Amendment, which was specifically made for this, right? If you're doing a hostile takeover of the government, at some point, this is going to get extremely serious, right? And a lot of people, more and more people, and it's very clear, by the way, that people like Biden are trying to draw the peaceful side into doing violent actions, which the Democrats have been doing all along, whether it's attacking the Capitol and blaming MAGA people, or in so many different things that we've seen. I was a personal witness to the Capitol on January 6th, as were you, and as were many others. We see that there was a huge. It was a circus. It was a play almost, right? And we've seen this over and over and over, where these false flags and these every white person that shows his face, they just call him a racist for the moment he says, "Hey, there might be fraud in this election. Hey, you're a racist." So it's incredible, right? But I'll tell you one thing: that card is worn out. A lot of us don't care anymore. We're not listening to that anymore. We don't care. We don't even care what they think. We don't care how they feel about us. We're tired of them, and we're tired of that. And we don't want common ground. We want fair elections, period, right? And that's it. We want the law to be followed. We want the Constitution to be our law of the land. And the evil side, let's just call them evil. They're the ones that have opened the border wide open, and they're watching kids and women be raped every single day. I've spent a lot of time on the border, as have you, and we know what happens down there. You've seen the women dragged in and the children. You've seen them with your own eyes. You know what's happening down there. I know what's happening down there. All these people that work on the borders know what's happening down there. There's massive amounts of drugs coming into the United States. Fentanyl is killing Americans all over this country every single day. You've seen it in Portland. You've seen the free needles that are handed out by the government and the drug paraphernalia, so that people that are living on the streets by huge numbers. It's basically like we've got 1 million Hunter Bidens living on the streets, a bunch of crack addicts. We've got, Hunter Biden, president's own son, massive drug addict, massive sex freak, always filming himself with prostitutes and everything else. These are the people that are running our country, right? And Nancy Pelosi, her drunk husband, getting into accidents in his vehicle, some weird guy breaking into his house with a clear cover up around that. We can all see it. We're run by people that shouldn't be there. And we have a constitution that allows us recourse, right? And to do so within the law. It just takes courage, right? It takes courage and organization. Our military is compromised. Our top military is compromised. Many of our generals, most of them at this point, are basically useless. Or they're not even useless. They're in some instances working for the enemy. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is openly a traitor. He's an absolute traitor. In a different generation, he would be hanged by the neck until dead. After going to court and losing and being found a traitor, he is a clear traitor. He said it with his own mouth, talking about warning China in case Trump decided to do some nuclear attack, which Trump wasn't the one starting wars. Meanwhile, we're running off into Ukraine. Here's another issue. If we get sane leadership in the House and the Senate during this election, which it's unknown if it'll happen. But if it does happen, this war in Ukraine can end from the U.S. side, right? And just pumping tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars into this. And it's just, where's it going? We saw what happened in Afghanistan. We saw what happened in Iraq. It's just Americans are living on the streets by the millions. People are losing their homes. As we speak, businesses are closing down. You see Europe is doing the same thing. Fertilizer shortages, going into global famine, and they're running off and starting wars, right? So the kind of people that will do that and allow our country to just import fentanyl and other drugs by unknown amounts, just killing and destroying life. You've been all around America. You've seen all these people living on the streets, smelling, defecating on the streets, urinating on the streets, stabbing people on the streets, murdering and raping people on the streets. Unlivable in many of the downtown areas. Washington, D.C. is basically a third world country with pillars and a lot of money. It's the richest third world country I've ever seen, right? And the same with Portland, Oregon. It's like a very rich third world country. You wouldn't take your children downtown in Portland. Nobody would, right? I had a man arguing with me recently saying, Portland's nice. I go there all the time. I'm like, okay, either you're scoring drugs and that's why it's nice, or you're lying, or you're absolutely insane. Downtown Portland is not nice. I've spent about a month there in the last couple of years, on and off, and it's a terrible, terrible place. I mean, it's dangerous. People are defecating all over the sidewalk. There's violence. There was terrorist threats tonight in Portland. I was, in fact, I said something to Andy No about that, and to some other people. I mean, there was clear terrorist threats against one of the politicians tonight by Antifa, right? Or maybe about 8 hours ago. And so 8 or 9 hours ago, right? And this is normal business in Portland, right? And this is just creeping across America like that, right? Whether it's Atlanta or Portland or up in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. is a no-go zone. I mean, you've been to Washington, D.C. You spent a lot of time there. Would you walk down Washington, D.C. with children? You know what I mean? Would you take children to downtown Washington, D.C. without armed guards? I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's the capital of the country that's running off trying to guard Ukrainian borders, right?
Mm-hmm. So,
anyway.
I would like to ask you lastly one more question. Now you're at the place where Carrie Lake had rally tonight, right? Did you hear her talk? What she saying?
Oh yeah, she was, giving a pep talk, of course, and in talking about the state of the nation and that sort of thing. And I think it may have been live because there's probably 200 reporters. It's got to be more than that. I mean, there was so many reporters; it was unbelievable. I mean, there's been so much coverage here. This is like General Flynn. You know Mike Flynn. I think you've talked with Mike Flynn, and General Flynn is down in Florida. And I heard him on War Room tonight, and he sent a message to me as well. He said that this is a turnout like a presidential turnout, Mike Flynn. And he's a very serious guy, of course. He's a good observer. And he said that the Florida turnout, this is like a presidential level. And here, the same thing, like the massive amount of media that turned out, the massive amount of voter turnout. But you know what was interesting? At the two polling places I went to, you know how much media I saw there? Like that Polish guy says, zero, right? I saw zero media at the two polling places I went. But here, it's like, seriously, there's more. There was literally, I don't know, 200 or 300 journalists here. I made video that was something that was kind of stunning. In fact, it was kind of stunning how many got packed into this little place.
Wait, so you're saying, sorry to cut you off, but you're saying that many journalists came to hear Carrie Lake, but they were not at the place where the turbillator was broken or not working.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure some of them were, but actually, I'm sorry. There was a journalist. There was a couple of journalists, and the ones that I know of that were out there was Ben Bergquam from Real America's Voice. He was on War Room. I was listening to Ben on War Room. As you know, Ben took him down to Darien Gap. He's a very serious man, very serious reporter. So Ben Bergquam was out there from beginning to end. In fact, I saw him just before we went on air. And then another lady that I just met today, her name was Grace Chung, and she was out there, and she was on War Room. She's on War Room all the time. It was actually Steve Bannon introduced me to her today. And so we met at one of the polling places, and she actually showed up with her parents who flew in with her. So, you know what I mean? She didn't come in like corporate jet or something like some of these reporters seem to be doing. They got these huge crews, and there's like, I don't know, a dozen of those giant trucks out there. There was more than that with the high antennas and all that. And then there was literally hundreds of reporters with, you know, very serious setups. And I didn't see them at the polling places. I saw Grace Chung. I saw Grace Chung with her parents, you know, and Ben Bergquam, and they were both from War Room and Real America's Voice, right? So where was this CBS and NBC and all that and all the I'm sure they were out there somewhere. I'm sure they were out there somewhere. But shouldn't they be out there looking for a voter for election integrity? You know, that's where they should be if they were doing their jobs. But they're not. They're all slaves, you know, and we all know what they are. But they were allowed in. They were allowed in here. They weren't like kept out or anything like that. Nobody threw anything at them. This isn't BLM. This is not Antifa. Nothing happened to the reporters. They had all their expensive gear out there. You know what happens to reporters like that at Antifa or BLM? They get beat up. They get killed. They get their gear destroyed, stolen, smashed in the face. Look at Andy Ngo, brain damage. You met Andy Ngo, and I think you interviewed him in London, right? And he, you know, he's got brain damage from what happened to him. I've seen video of him being attacked, brutally attacked, 2 different attacks, 2 different days, completely, both times, very badly attacked. It's just little Andy Ngo. He's not out there with any big cameras or anything. So you show up to Antifa or BLM, you may be raped and killed on the spot, right? But you show up here to MAGA while you're stealing elections and nothing happens to the reporters, right? The worst that'll happen is people say, why don't you do your job? You know, or don't you feel bad about doing these things? Nothing happens. They don't need helmets here. They don't need guns. They don't need, you know, nothing's going to happen. Maybe somebody will say, you know, you should do your job. That's about it. Yeah, that's a big difference. We're civilized, right? And the problem is we're too civilized and they're taking advantage of it. That's exactly what's happening. The uncivilized people are taking advantage of the civilized people, right? And, you know, this is not going to continue. There's no way it's going to continue. It'll destroy the United States, you know, and a lot of us believe in this country, still believe in this country, love the United States, just as I know you love Japan. I know you do. And that's important. You know, the Japanese patriots stand up the same way that American patriots stand up, right? You know, we saw some over in Netherlands that are standing up, and many others are just rolling over, right? Right now, many Americans will just not paying any attention to this election, but millions and millions more of us are. We're tired of it. That's why I just flew all the way in from Thailand just to come here to Phoenix, right?
Okay. Thank you very much. And I guess the real battle starts on the day of election. So I'm sure you're gonna be very busy, but I hope to hear from you continuously. And thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to the great people of Japan. I love your country and I hope to see it again.
Thank you.